It is the greatest transfer of wealth that we have seen in our lifetime, from the bottom going up. The $4 trillion now being held by all U.S. billionaires is more than double the bottom half of the population. 165 million Americans control about 2.1 trillion. Again, all U.S. billionaires control over 4 trillion. Their wealth has increased substantially during this COVID crisis, which raises a serious question. If things are working so well for them, why would the elites ever move to end these lockdowns? Well, in fact, they're not planning to, even according to Dr. Anthony Fauci. When there's a vaccine, masks, social distancing, and lockdowns will continue. We're looking into it today. I'm Ben Swan, and this is Truth in Media. Hey guys, welcome to the show. A lot to get to today because we are specifically talking about this issue of so much wealth transferring from the bottom half of America up to the richest and most powerful people. We are small businesses being decimated across this country with no end in sight. The lockdowns continue in so many states like New York and California, where business owners are rallying daily, demanding the reopening of their businesses because they say otherwise they're going to be completely bankrupt. And as that's happening, what are we actually hearing from those who are in authority, people like Dr. Anthony Fauci? Well, what we're hearing from him is very simple. When there is a vaccine, and it's coming very shortly, don't worry, that vaccine won't actually end the lockdowns. It won't end the wearing of face masks, and it won't end social distancing. So you have to ask the question, then what's the point of the vaccine? In fact, they're saying it can't even prevent the transmission of the coronavirus. So what's the point here, again, other than to create massive amounts of wealth for a small group of people? Well, that really is the point. Before we get into all that today, let's give a shout out to our sponsor for this episode, because if you are sick and tired of not having control of your financial life, especially in times like this, maybe it's time for you to own your own business. Kim Daly, thedailycoach.com, can teach you exactly how to do that. Kim is America's #1 franchise consultant. What she can do is teach you how to take complete control of your economic and financial life, and certainly your economic future. Again, if you're tired of running the rat race and being stuck on some wheel with some boss and some corporation telling you exactly what to do and how to do it, you got to talk to Kim today. Her service is completely free, as she'll give you a consultation into whether or not owning your own business, owning your own franchise is right for you. In the description below, by the way, we have a link to a 25-minute interview I did with Kim recently where she explains in detail what she's all about. Or you can also check her out at thedailycoach.com. All right, going back to this issue of the wealth transfer that's taking place, Americans for Tax Fairness has actually put together a pretty interesting report on this. And what they're essentially showing is how the billionaire class has become so much more wealthy, so much more powerful during this time of COVID. Quote, "Never before has America seen such an accumulation of wealth in so few hands," said Frank Clemente, executive director of the Americans for Tax Fairness, "as tens of millions of Americans suffer from the health and economic ravages of this pandemic. A few hundred billionaires add to their massive fortunes. Their pandemic profits are so immense that America's billionaires could pay for a major COVID relief bill and still not lose a dime of their pre-virus riches. Their wealth has grown so great that they alone could provide a $3,000 stimulus payment to every man, woman, and child in the country and still be richer than they were 9 months ago." Those numbers, hard to even imagine. They could give a $3,000 stimulus check to every man, woman, and child. So in a household of 4, that's $12,000, and they'd still be richer than they were 9 months ago. That's the kind of wealth transfer that is taking place across this country. But if you are in that billionaire class, you have to ask the question, why would you ever want to go back to a pre-pandemic world? In reality, that pre-pandemic world wasn't doing as well for you as the world is today. And so that becomes a major, major problem. Of course, in order to keep this going, you have to continually create new narratives and reasons for why lockdowns must continue, why shutdowns must take place. You must constantly reframe the narrative, because in the beginning it was 2 weeks of lockdowns, then 2 months of lockdowns. It was to flatten the curve. It was to make sure we had enough ventilators and hospital beds. Then it became an issue of, well, we have to make sure that we stop the second spread, the second wave of the virus coming through. And now it's starting to become a permanent part of life. In fact, Bill Gates recently said that we will not go back to pre-pandemic life until at least 2022. That is what he is saying. I talked recently with Jeffrey Tucker. He's a part of an effort to create something called the Great Barrington Declaration. It was a declaration that's now been signed onto by tens of thousands of medical professionals, scientists, and doctors, some of the smartest people in the world. And what are they collectively saying? They are saying that these lockdowns are hurting people far more than they are helping them. You know that by now. The lockdowns that are not helping the economy, but they're also not helping mental health. They're not helping education. They are literally destroying the country. They are literally destroying our middle class. And yet we're being told that this is the only path forward. And when you look at the amount of wealth being sucked up and controlled by the most powerful people in this country, it makes sense why we continue down a path that makes no sense for anyone with common sense. Here's that interview with Jeffrey Tucker.
It's the strangest aspect of what we're living through right now, and I've resisted this idea that the lockdowns are being driven by the pharmaceutical companies, because it sounds like too much of a conspiracy theory. But there is something very weird going on. I mean, in the course of normal life, for however long human life has existed, our immune systems have adapted to new pathogens as they come along. In fact, it's one of the Ben, it's one of the most extraordinary observations from Sunetra Gupta, who's at Oxford, who's like a philosopher of infectious diseases in some way, that she observed that in the 20th century we've had so much trade and so much travel and so much contact with people who are unlike ourselves. We have the least naive immune systems in history, and this accounts for but in part for why we live such long lives, that we've developed so much exposure that our immune systems have gotten stronger. I mean, our immune systems exist for a reason, and that's the strangest thing about 2020 is that we've pretended as if the immune system, doesn't exist at all, which is very strange because it's like zeroing out all the knowledge we've had for 100 years. It's like it's suddenly gone, and we think that the only cure for disease is for people to sit in labs and concoct some potion that they're going to inject into us. And there's a lot of confusion about what this potion consists of. I think the popular understanding of vaccines is that it builds a wall, between you and the disease. Kind of like, if you download a virus protection program on your computer and the virus comes in and then the computer stops it from infecting your hard drive, right? That's how people think of vaccines and their relationship to viruses. I actually think this is a linguistic confusion. The only way in the biological and natural world that vaccines work is by interplaying with a functioning immune system. So it can give your immune system a kick. And we sometimes they perform miracles. Look what happened to smallpox. I mean, that's a glorious and the signature case of the best vaccine that we've ever had. But the problem is the vaccine is not necessary for people who otherwise can develop natural immunities. And that's a good thing to develop natural immunities. A natural immunity is naturally acquired immunity is always safer and effective than any vaccine. And especially for mild respiratory illnesses, which SARS-CoV-2 is. And I'm saying this not as I'm an economist, not but I'm relying on the authority of others in observing that. But the other problem is that the vaccine will be ineffective for people without functioning immune systems. And it's an empirical question. How many of the people who have died from COVID-19 have had non-functioning immune systems, in which case they would not have been improved by the existence of a vaccine at all? I don't know the answer to that. Is it 20%, 50%, 90%? I don't know. It's an empirical question, but the fact that this isn't even being discussed is, to me, something of a scandal.
I have one more question for you before I let you go, Jeffrey, and it is an economics question. It's also a markets question, a free markets question. We have this talk of vaccines, certainly the Moderna vaccine. The mRNA technology that's been developed there was not Moderna's development. It actually was developed by government scientists working in the NIH. Moderna signed a contract with the NIH in December of last year to start working on projects together. But it's already been established that not only does it not belong to Moderna, but scientists from the NIH have actually filed for patents alongside Moderna so that they can make money off of this. My question for you is, if U.S. taxpayers in Operation Warp Speed spent $2 billion on a Pfizer vaccine, You know, they spent $2 billion going to Moderna for their vaccines. Should these companies be allowed to charge, or should the vaccines themselves be free to the public? How do we have government-funded scientists developing in government-funded programs the vaccine technology, which is then paid for in advance to the development to these companies, and then we're still supposed to pay for vaccines when the time comes?
And Ben, let's just be clear about what a patent amounts to. It means a legal protection for one company to be the sole producer of what would easily be reverse engineered by other people. So there's nothing free market about a patent, and nothing free market about a pharmaceutical patent especially. It's basically a government privilege towards a capitalistic company that does not want to compete in the market. So I think you ask a really important question here. And I think in the coming years, we're really going to have to come to terms with this. I mean, Ben, really the question is, did we destroy New York? Did we destroy the United States? Did we destroy the world and any semblance of what we used to call human rights and civilization so that a handful of companies could make monopoly profits by enforcing patents, contrary to all market logic? You know, that is a terrifying question, and it's actually almost too much for me to even contemplate right now. But we're going to have to come to terms with it.
Yeah, I think we do have to come to terms with it, and I think this idea that when we talk about what is happening to our economies, because it's not just one economy, right? It's economies around the world, and it's certainly multiple economies throughout the United States, and what people are living through and struggling with. When we hear the talk of what happens in the next 6 months, the next year, 2021, does the entire year also become part of the system? And if that is the case, Jeffrey, are we looking at a realignment of global economics? And certainly companies like Amazon, certainly the big tech companies and corporations seem to be doing fine during these times, but it's those small businesses. Does COVID have the potential to wipe out the middle class, not just in America, but worldwide?
It seems to be that's what we're trying to do. We've created a new feudalism, and I'll just tell you a little bit of an anecdote, what I'm talking about here. Primitive societies or pre-modern societies always assigned to some one class to bear the burden of herd immunity on behalf of a ruling class. And I think that's what we're doing here. I must tell you, I went out to a restaurant last night. There's something profoundly disturbing about watching fancy people sit at dinner, sucking down cocktails and enjoying fancy food, while a wait staff and cooks and everybody is wearing gloves and masks as if they're the unclean people that service us. That is not the way we do it under freedom and democracy and equality. This is wrong, it's disgusting, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. And what I just described is a microcosm of what's happening all over the world. The ruling class is getting its way using largely bogus science and state coercion in a way that's at the expense of our health, our families, our religions, our faith, everything we've ever valued, our national traditions, everything, our right to travel, everything we've ever valued. And the only people who are winning from these lockdowns are the ruling class. Every day I've woken up for the last 11 months and 10 months and hoped it would be over. And I don't think we can give up hope. I just hope that, that tomorrow, we'll wake up in the morning and realize we're not going to put up with this anymore, and we are going to go back to public health, freedom, democracy, some semblance of equality and normalcy, so we can get on with building civilization instead of destroying it.
Guys, thanks for watching. By the way, I just want to mention this was part 4 of a 4-part series specifically dealing with COVID. If you want to see the other parts of the series, just send me a text at the number you see on your screen right now. If you will text me at that number, we will send those reports directly to your mobile device.